We really did want to do something that was very big and very special and took us to some place that was new for features. There's some place that Star Trek could take us, that was unique to Star Trek.
I think it was me who solved the jigsaw puzzle. And I said, if we do this, then we get there, and we go there, and then we get this. And Leonard said, that's great. You got to tell it to Bob Wise. So we immediately asked Bob to leave the set, come into an office, and I performed this idea now the second time. And I said, if we do this and we do that, we get that, we get that. And Bob said, that's great. Now you've got to do that for Gene Roddenberry. So sometime later, we got Gene Roddenberry in the room, and now I'm about to do my third performance of the day. I must have been tired because I was doing another performance on screen, because I didn't do it quite as well, and it wasn't quite as impressive to Gene as it had been to Bob and to Leonard. Gene said, well, I don't know, I've got to think about that. And he thought about it long enough so that he didn't do it. Whatever it was, I've forgotten what it was.
The creator line was in there, had been in there all along. The V'ger wants to was seeking its creator. I came up with the notion that it was trying to catch its creator, that it wanted to evolve, that it wanted to evolve its consciousness.
We had to push like mad to get the film done.
Bob Wise is a brilliant director, and he knows exactly what he wants. And by the time I came along, the movie was almost finished. The bulk of main unit shooting had been completed, and even a lot of shooting on effects sequences had been performed, kind of waiting for post-production.
Somebody finally sat down, I think it was me, with Jeffrey Katzenberg and Lindsley Parsons and said, there's only 280 working days left if we work Saturdays and Sundays, and there's 525 shots. What do we do?
There was nothing to cut to. There was no way to get out of it because he expected the shots to be there.
The actors had reacted to a blue screen, and so it was, imagine, if you will, on the screen, something happening and then react to it. So we had all these great reactions, people swallowing a lot or blinking their eyes in awe.
So he lined up his actors, he did all his reverses and his coverage and dialogue and everything, and you cut to the viewport or whatever the shot was, and boy, it better be there or you were you were in deep trouble. We did the whole V'ger cloud sequence going through the cloud, which is one of the most beautiful sequences I've ever worked on. And a woman named Alison Yerksa and a whole team of animators did that whole sequence of multiplane exposures of airbrushed artwork. Each level was like only an inch apart from the other level, and a different shape and a different shape and a different shape, which would create these very complex, convoluted corridors of light. Nobody knew what the heck this cloud was supposed to look like.
It was defined in the script in words, but there was really no definition, no illustration that showed specifically what it was going to look like.
You know, it's easy to say cloud in a screenplay, but when you got to actually execute it, you know, it can't be just a cloud. It has to be something special.
When we got to doing the score, and Jerry Goldsmith, who had done a marvelous score for me on Sampa, was going to do the score.
It's so exciting when you hear music come alive with an orchestra, a big orchestra on a scoring stage, and everybody gets thrilled and excited and all that. And Bob was mildly, and he smiled. And
I listened to the first couple of pieces, and it didn't seem quite right to me. It seemed like I got visions of sailing ships somehow.
The scene of the flying up to the Enterprise was a big bombastic piece, and we all thought it was so wonderful. And to finish the sessions, and I'm patting myself on the back, and everybody's patting, it's great and all that. And
Bob grabbed me, pulled me out in the hallway. We walked down the hall. I said, well, what do you think? And I could never lie to Bob. I couldn't get away with it even if I wanted to. I mean, it's impossible. So I said, well, I think it sounds like, sailing ships. And he says, well, I think it sounds like Conestoga wagons. What do we do?
And he couldn't really articulate what was bothering him. He instinctually knew what was bothering him, but he couldn't say what was bothering him. So I said, we got to do that all over again. And so I was crushed.
Those were pretty frightening moments. Those are the type of moments where if you were going to start having a breakdown, that's when you were going to start doing it.
I said, well, what's bothering you? And he finally said, there's no theme. And I started thinking, theme? Oh, it was a love theme. I'd written a love theme. That was, but I mean, there was no Star Trek theme. I said, oh.
Yeah, when we took a little break and Jerry went away, and while we were doing some more work on the film and whatnot, and then he came back with his revised score.
He'd come over to the house. He had a bad day of the special effects, and he says, I've had a really bad day today. He says, nothing's working right. I hope you got good news for me. So I remember the head of the music department at Fox, at Paramount, was there then. And we had rehearsed this, and I had two pianos in the living room, and we played it for him on the two pianos. He said, that's it. It was like, why didn't you come up with that in the first place?
With principal photography completed, production executive Jeffrey Katzenberg had to oversee the completion of the film itself, a process that would take everyone right down to the wire.
That's true. He was a big help on the film. You know, he was fairly new out here. I think it was the first picture that he had actually had anything to do with, and so he was very, very busy keeping everybody steamed up and keyed up about the film, and the fact that we had his release date, we had to get the film done, and he was very good and very effective at that.
I kept saying to myself, Jeffrey's going to become a very important person after this. And I remember getting phone calls from Jeffrey. He says, how's it going, kid? You know, and he's like the kid, like the cheerleader going on, we got to win this one for the Gipper and all that. And he was doing it with me. I'm sure he was doing it with everybody. And he had this indomitable spirit. This was going to get done, and he was going to see it got done.
The only thing I remember about that is that I actually put on 1,100 miles a week on my car for the last 4 weeks of post-production of it, of literally having Bob in the editing room, half starting at the crack of dawn at Paramount, going down to Doug Trumbull in Marina del Rey, the scoring of the movie on the Fox stage, John Dykstra out at by the Van Nuys Airport, doing the other half of the effects, and sort of making that loop around Los Angeles twice a day. Again, just sort of trying to be a cheerleader to, get everybody, moving along in it. I think I pretty much just spent my day in the car.
Everything was happening at the very last minute. We would finish shots, and they would go into the lab and get cut in, and it was miraculous what actually got achieved.
We went so far down to the last minute where there's, again, the head of post-production at Paramount, this guy who's been there for now 35 years, Paul Hagar, who's just brilliant, literally took over a sound stage at MGM, and the entire stage was covered with 3,000 cans, all earmarked for theaters.
And as each reel was finished from the lab, it was rushed over, literally wet.
It looked like little gravestones. These huge container, the film containers, the metal boxes, and they were all lined up, and they were identified to go here and there.
There's this shot of all of these. The entire soundstage is filled with these cans, all pre-labeled, waiting for the last reel to be dropped in, with airplanes sitting on tarmacs waiting for these cans to arrive there. I mean, it really was a Herculean effort.
That's the only film I think I ever made. I didn't have a sneak preview. Sneak preview is where you go out and try it out before it's finally buttoned up, but I didn't have the time for that, so we just had to button up Star Trek: The Motion Picture. As I say, I took it to Washington.
We were sitting in the movie theater in Washington, the premiere having been held there. And the film was being put into the machine. It had literally come in a can under somebody's arm.
Matter of fact, I carried the print with me on the plane to Washington for the premiere.
Most days, Bob Wise would come in, and by the, he would come in, he would be, bright and strong and positive in the morning, and by the end of the day, he'd be shaking his head, and he'd say, never in 35 years of doing this have I ever had an experience like this.
When we saw the movie, I was totally swept away with it. I thought it was great.
My wife and I and Jean went to a screening room, and we watched the movie, and we all went, and very sort of nervous, and we all went out and got drunk.
I said, well, you gave it a shot, it's over, And I bet a guy $50. I still owe him the money, that we would never make another movie.
Paramount had the lesson of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was a huge success.
The movie ended up grossing $82 million.
$414 million.
That's the equivalent of what it would
Today.
have grossed today. And so Paramount knew the audience was there.
Bob was very respectful of the series, and he was very respectful of all the people who had worked on the series, because that's the kind of person that he was. And it was Bob Wise who absolutely, under the most adverse conditions possible, held that picture together. That picture could not possibly have been made by anybody else.
It was the movie that gave rebirth to Star Trek.
Travel forward with us, 300 years into the future, to confront the greatest mystery ever to threaten mankind. We are aboard a huge starship called the Enterprise. This is the return of Captain Kirk.
An alien object of unbelievable destructive power is less than 3 days away from this planet.
Mr. Spock.
I offer my services as science officer.
Dr. McCoy. Scotty. And joining them on their mission, Commander Will Decker and Navigator Ilea.
I'm sorry.
That you left Delta for? Or that you didn't even say goodbye?
Get us back in impulse power. Full reverse. Wormhole distortion has overloaded the main power systems. Belay phaser order. Fire torpedoes.
This, then, is the epic journey of the Starship Enterprise, traveling to the outer limits of time and space to challenge a vast, living machine of destruction. The human adventure is just beginning. Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
A Gene Roddenberry production, a Robert Wise film.